Stop for a moment and think, how many times today has someone else's words, someone else's actions, or some random event stolen your peace? How many times have you felt powerless, frustrated, or angry because life didn't go your way? What if I told you that the single greatest power you will ever have is not in controlling the world, but in controlling yourself? Imagine walking through life unshaken, untouched, unstoppable, reacting to nothing, and in that stillness, controlling everything that truly matters. Today, I'm going to show you how to become that person. Mastering your inner world is the cornerstone of true power, and yet, so many people spend their lives chasing control in the external world, thinking that influence over circumstances, over other people, over events, will give them the security, the confidence, the freedom they crave. But let me tell you this, the external world is a mirage of control. No matter how much you try to shape it, no matter how much effort you pour into directing outcomes, life will always throw you variables, surprises, disappointments, and provocations that are beyond your grasp. The key to living a life of unshakable strength, to having the calm amidst chaos that so few truly experience, is not found in controlling the world. It is found in controlling yourself. This means mastering your inner world, your thoughts, your emotions, your impulses, your beliefs, and your focus. When we speak of mastering the inner world, we are talking about building a fortress of mental clarity, emotional resilience, and unwavering presence. It starts with awareness. Most people move through life on autopilot, reacting to every insult, every slight, every unexpected twist, as if they were powerless to choose their response. This reactive state is exhausting, it is draining, and it is disempowering. To master your inner world, you must first recognize this pattern and understand that at every moment you have the ability to choose your reaction. Awareness is the first doorway to power because it is the recognition that you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions, you are not the circumstances around you. You are the observer of all of these things, the presence that can decide in any given moment how to respond. Once awareness is cultivated, the next step is discipline. Discipline is the bridge between knowledge and action. You may understand intellectually that you do not need to react to every provocation, but without the discipline to practice restraint, that knowledge remains dormant. Discipline means training your mind to pause, to observe, to not be swept away by the turbulence of external events. It is the act of telling yourself, I will not allow my peace to be determined by what I cannot control. It is the small, consistent choices that define your mastery over your inner world, choosing not to engage in arguments that serve no purpose, refusing to let fear dictate your decisions, resisting the temptation to seek approval or validation from others, and maintaining calm when others are losing theirs. Every time you exercise this restraint, you strengthen the walls of your inner fortress, and every time you yield to external pressures, those walls are chipped away. Emotional intelligence is another critical element. Many people mistake emotional suppression for mastery, but true mastery is not about ignoring or denying your feelings. It is about understanding them, processing them, and deciding consciously how they will influence your actions. Emotions are information. They are signals that something matters to you, that something is being triggered inside, but they are not commands. Mastery of the inner world requires the ability to experience emotions fully without allowing them to hijack your mind or your behavior. It requires you to see anger, frustration, fear, and even joy as currents flowing through you, not as chains that bind you. By cultivating this relationship with your emotions, you create a state of equilibrium where nothing external can shake you. The mind itself must be trained as a tool, not as a master. Our thoughts are often automatic and reactive, shaped by past experiences, societal conditioning, and fleeting impulses. Left unchecked, the mind becomes a playground for anxiety, doubt, and distraction. Mastering the inner world means cultivating the ability to direct your thoughts intentionally, to focus on what matters, to filter out the noise, and to refuse mental energy to things that do not serve your purpose. This is achieved through practices like meditation, reflection, journaling, or any method that allows you to observe your thinking patterns, challenge your assumptions, and reinforce your focus. A disciplined mind creates a calm center that is impervious to chaos, a mental space where clarity reigns and strategy replaces impulse. Self-awareness, discipline, emotional intelligence, and mental clarity converge to create inner freedom. But there is one more crucial aspect: alignment with values and purpose. Mastery of the inner world is not about becoming detached from life. It is about engaging with it on your own terms. When your actions are aligned with your principles, your purpose, and your highest vision of yourself, you gain an unshakable sense of authority over your own life. External events may still occur, challenges will still arise, but your response will no longer be dictated by circumstance. It will be guided by intention. This alignment ensures that even in the face of adversity, even when provoked or tested, you operate from a position of strength rather than reaction, from calm rather than chaos, from mastery rather than helplessness. Practically speaking, mastering your inner world begins with small, consistent actions. Start by observing your reactions in everyday situations. Notice when irritation flares, when impatience rises, when fear whispers. Rather than suppressing these responses, label them, acknowledge them, and decide consciously how to respond. Build routines that reinforce your mental, emotional, and physical resilience. Practice meditation or mindfulness to stabilize the mind. Engage in regular exercise to maintain bodily control, and set aside time for reflection to maintain clarity of purpose. Surround yourself with influences that reinforce strength and calm rather than chaos and distraction. Each small act compounds over time, creating a life where you are no longer at the mercy of circumstances, where you are the unshakable center of your own world. The beauty of mastering your inner world is that it is a power that cannot be taken from you. No one can provoke it, no one can undermine it, and no event can diminish it. External control is fleeting, fragile, and dependent on forces beyond your reach, but mastery of self is permanent, reliable, and absolute. It allows you to navigate every relationship, every challenge, every opportunity with poise, precision, and unassailable calm. In essence, it transforms the way you exist in the world. You become a force that moves through life rather than being moved by it, a presence that others notice for its stability, for its clarity, for its undeniable strength. This mastery also cultivates a profound sense of confidence, not the hollow, ego-driven confidence that seeks validation from others, but a quiet, unshakable certainty rooted in the knowledge that you control your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. When you master your inner world, you no longer fear criticism, rejection, or failure, because you understand that these are external occurrences with no power over your core. You make decisions from a place of wisdom, not impulse, and you engage with challenges strategically, not emotionally. Your energy is no longer drained by unnecessary battles or reactive behavior, and you begin to experience a sense of freedom that most people never achieve in their lifetime. Finally, mastering your inner world is a lifelong practice, not a destination. Each day presents new tests, new provocations, and new opportunities to exercise control over your responses. But with each conscious choice, each moment of restraint, each act of reflection, you strengthen the architecture of your inner fortress. Over time, this mastery compounds, creating a life where you are calm in storms, steady in uncertainty, and clear in decision-making. You will notice that as your inner world stabilizes, the external world begins to bend to your focus rather than the other way around. Opportunities align, relationships deepen, and influence grows, not because you control everything around you, but but because you have mastered yourself to the point where your presence alone commands respect, steadiness, and authority. Emotions are the most powerful forces within us, yet they are also the most misunderstood. Too often, we allow them to run unchecked, to dictate our behavior, to determine our decisions, and even to define who we are. People mistake emotional reactions for truth, and they mistake intensity for correctness. But the reality is that emotions, like all forces, are neutral. They are not inherently good or bad. They are not commands to be obeyed, and they are certainly not dictators of your destiny. They are tools, signals that give you information about yourself, about your environment, and about what matters to you, but they require mastery, not submission. The moment you recognize that emotions are tools rather than dictators, you step into a realm of control, clarity, and freedom that most people never experience. Learning to observe without reacting is the first step in this mastery. The human mind is wired to respond automatically to stimuli, a survival mechanism that has protected us throughout evolution. A threat appears, and your body reacts with fear. A challenge arises, and anger flares. A loss occurs, and grief consumes you. In the modern world, these automatic reactions are often misaligned with the situations we face. The fear that rises when someone criticizes you at work, the anger that flares in traffic, the anxiety that overwhelms when plans fall apart. These are automatic responses, reflexes that have no bearing on your true power. Observing your emotions without reacting means creating a pause between the stimulus and your response, a pause where awareness and choice emerge. In that pause, you reclaim control over your mind and your life. Observation requires discipline because the mind naturally wants to identify, judge, and act. When an emotion arises, most people immediately label it anger, jealousy, fear, resentment, and then act on it without reflection. But the master of the inner world resists this impulse. They do not deny their feelings, nor do they act upon them instantly. Instead, they acknowledge the emotion, feel it fully, and analyze it as data rather than instruction. Ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Why has it arisen now? What assumptions or beliefs is it attached to? By framing emotions as information rather than imperatives, you transform them from reactive chains into navigational tools. Emotions are also intimately tied to our thoughts, which is why emotional mastery requires mental clarity. Thoughts trigger emotions, and emotions reinforce thoughts, creating cycles that can either empower or imprison us. Someone insults you, and the thought, "They don't respect me," triggers anger. The anger then reinforces the belief, "I am being wronged." And before long, you are lost in a storm of reactivity. By observing without reacting, you disrupt this cycle. You notice the thought, you feel the emotion, but you refuse to give it power over your actions. You understand that the insult is external, the anger is internal, and the response, your true power, remains yours to choose. Another crucial aspect is the recognition of impermanence. Emotions are temporary. Fear will fade, anger will cool, disappointment will pass. Yet most people act as if emotions are permanent dictators, as if being upset, anxious, or frustrated is an immutable state that must shape their behavior. By understanding the transient nature of emotions, you create a buffer against impulsive actions. You can ride the waves of feeling without being drowned by them. The simple practice of pausing, taking a breath, and observing your emotions creates space where rationality, strategy, and intention can replace impulsivity. Emotional mastery also requires detachment, not in the sense of apathy, but in the sense of not letting external events control your internal state. The world is full of provocations, criticism, injustice, delays, failures, betrayals, and surprises. Your emotional state in response to these events determines the quality of your life far more than the events themselves. By treating emotions as tools, you detach from the illusion that life's circumstances must dictate how you feel. Anger, fear, joy, or sadness become instruments you can use to navigate life rather than chains that bind you. A practical method for developing this mastery is mindfulness. Mindfulness trains you to notice your emotions without judgment, to observe their emergence, their intensity, and their trajectory. When practiced consistently, mindfulness transforms emotional reactivity into conscious response. You begin to see the difference between stimulus and reaction, between feeling and acting. This difference is where control lies, where power emerges. The mind becomes a calm observer, the emotions become clear signals, and your actions become intentional rather than reflexive. It is also essential to understand that mastery of emotions is not about suppression. Suppression creates tension, stress, and eventual breakdown. Mastery is about engagement and redirection. Anger can be transformed into assertiveness, frustration into focus, fear into preparation, sadness into reflection. By channeling emotions into constructive energy, you not only avoid being controlled by them, but you also leverage them to enhance your influence, decision making, and effectiveness. Emotional intelligence extends beyond self, mastery to interactions with others. By observing your emotions without immediate reaction, you gain clarity in communication, negotiation, and leadership. You become capable of responding with strategy rather than impulse, of influencing without intimidation, of commanding respect without aggression. The people around you may not understand how you maintain such composure, but they will recognize your authority, your steadiness, and your control. In essence, mastering emotions enhances both your internal world and your external influence. Finally, remember that emotions are indicators, not dictators. They reveal what matters, where your values lie, and what triggers your growth or limitation. By observing without reacting, by feeling without surrendering, you transform emotions into allies rather than adversaries. You gain a clarity that allows you to move through life with purpose, calm, and power. The moment you stop letting emotions dictate your choices, you reclaim your freedom. You are no longer at the mercy of fear, anger, or doubt. Instead, you wield these forces with intelligence, intention, and control. Your presence becomes unshakable because it is no longer determined by passing waves of feeling, but by a steady, conscious choice to observe, learn, and act from strength. Silence is one of the most underrated powers in existence. In a world that glorifies constant reaction, immediate responses, and verbal dominance, the ability to remain silent is often mistaken for weakness or indecision. Yet silence, when wielded intentionally, is not only a weapon but a shield. It is the space between stimulus and response where true power resides. Most people speak before they think, react before they reflect, and allow their impulses to dictate the course of conversations, decisions, and relationships. Those who understand the strength of pause, however, understand that by embracing silence, they gain control over themselves, over situations, and over others. The first principle of using silence as a weapon is the acknowledgement that words have weight. Every word carries energy, intention, and consequence. When you speak without thought, you surrender control to the moment. You allow external events, provocations, and pressures to dictate what you say, often resulting in regret, conflict, or loss of influence. By pausing, by creating a deliberate space of silence, you reclaim authority over your voice. You are no longer a puppet of circumstance, but a conscious participant in dialogue and interaction. Silence allows reflection, strategy, and composure to enter before action, transforming impulsive reactions into deliberate, purposeful responses. Silence also serves as a mirror to others. When faced with provocation, criticism, or manipulation, the instinct of most people is to react immediately, to defend themselves, or to assert their position. This reaction signals vulnerability, uncertainty, or lack of control. Choosing silence instead communicates strength. It conveys that you are not easily rattled, that you are confident in your perspective, and that your power is not contingent upon approval, validation, or immediate argument. People are drawn to composure. They respect the calm presence that does not flinch under pressure. Silence, therefore, becomes a subtle yet formidable tool of influence and authority. The art of pause is where silence reveals its transformative potential. The pause is the intentional gap between external stimulus and your internal response. It is the moment when you step outside of the chaos, detach from the provocation, and observe the situation with clarity. In that pause, emotional impulses lose their grip, and rational thought, strategy, and intention take their rightful place. Every pause is an opportunity to assess the consequences of your words and actions, to anticipate the impact, to choose the response that serves your highest purpose. This is where mastery emerges, where control is reclaimed not through aggression or reaction, but through restraint and thoughtful engagement. Silence also protects your energy. Every reaction, every argument, every unnecessary response drains mental, emotional, and physical resources. By speaking less and pausing more, you conserve your energy for moments that truly require action. The world is filled with distractions, provocations, and petty conflicts that do not warrant your response, yet most people expend enormous energy on them. Silence allows you to redirect your focus to what truly matters, to preserve your strength, and to act decisively only when the situation demands it. This selective engagement magnifies your impact because it is grounded in purpose rather than reflex. Furthermore, silence cultivates self-mastery. To remain silent in the face of provocation requires courage, discipline, and confidence. It is a practice of inner strength that reinforces control over your impulses, emotions, and ego. In moments of silence, you confront yourself, your fears, your insecurities, your need for validation, and you learn to navigate them without letting them dictate your behavior. This internal alignment between thought, emotion, and action is the essence of personal power. It is the foundation upon which influence, authority, and respect are built. In interpersonal dynamics, silence can be strategically employed to create space for insight and influence. By listening more than speaking, by observing more than reacting, you gain a deeper understanding of others, their motivations, fears, weaknesses, and patterns. This knowledge becomes a tool for strategic action. People often reveal more in your silence than they would in your words. The absence of immediate reaction encourages others to fill the void, often exposing themselves, their intentions, or the dynamics of the situation. The one who remains silent, who exercises patience and composure, becomes the orchestrator of influence rather than a participant of chaos. Silence also fosters clarity of mind. In a world flooded with noise, opinions, distractions, obligations, the mind becomes cluttered, reactive, and fatigued. Intentional silence allows reflection, recalibration, and focus. It is the pause that separates instinct from wisdom, impulsivity from strategy. Those who practice silence regularly develop a mental resilience that makes them impervious to manipulation, gossip, and provocation. They act from a position of insight rather than reaction, from strength rather than desperation, from clarity rather than confusion. The psychological impact of silence on others cannot be overstated. Silence conveys confidence and authority in ways words often cannot. When someone seeks to provoke pressure or manipulate you, responding hastily signals uncertainty or defensiveness. Silence, on the other hand, communicates mastery, patience, and unshakable composure. It forces the other party to confront their own impulses, to question their assumptions, and often to overextend themselves in their need for engagement. In this sense, silence becomes a form of leverage, a weapon of control that does not rely on aggression, but on presence, patience, and calculated restraint. Finally, silence allows intention to govern action. When you learn to pause before responding, you gain the ability to choose the words, tone, and timing that maximize impact. You speak not to react, but to influence. You act not to please, but to lead. This deliberate approach transforms ordinary interactions into opportunities for leadership, strategy, and personal growth. Every pause, every measured silence, every calculated observation strengthens your inner authority and extends your influence in ways that reactionary speech cannot. Mastering silence is not an easy path. It requires constant vigilance, self-discipline, and courage. The world tempts you to react, to assert, to defend, and to over-explain. But the reward is unparalleled: the ability to navigate life with poise, to respond with precision, to act with purpose, and to command respect without raising your voice. Silence is not emptiness, it is power. It is a weapon that shapes outcomes, a shield that preserves energy, and a force that allows mastery over yourself and influence over the world around you. In the art of silence, you discover that control is not taken through noise or aggression, but through the calm, deliberate, and strategic choice to pause, observe, and act with intention. Detachment from outcomes is one of the most misunderstood concepts in the pursuit of personal power. Many people live their lives as if control over results is the key to success, happiness, and stability, yet the reality is that outcomes are inherently uncertain, unpredictable, and often influenced by forces beyond your control. The moment you tie your peace, your energy, or your identity to the results of external events, you surrender your power to variables you cannot govern. True mastery, true control, lies not in manipulating outcomes, but in mastering your focus, the energy, attention, and action you bring to the present moment. When you detach from outcomes, you free yourself from the tyranny of expectation, fear, and disappointment, and you step into a state of unwavering clarity and effectiveness. The first principle of detachment is understanding the distinction between effort and result. Effort is yours, result is often not. You can act with precision, discipline, and intention, yet the world may respond unpredictably. People may reject your ideas, circumstances may shift, and unexpected obstacles may arise. Those who tie their satisfaction or sense of self-worth to the result are enslaved by every variable they cannot control. Those who focus instead on the effort, the process, the mastery of their own actions, remain grounded and effective regardless of outcome. Effort is where control resides, outcome is where uncertainty thrives. By detaching from what cannot be dictated, you redirect energy to what can, the mastery of your attention, focus, and deliberate action. Detachment does not mean passivity or indifference, it means engagement with precision and awareness. You pursue goals, take action, and invest energy, but you do so without the anxiety of attachment to a specific result. This creates a paradoxical strength. You act with maximum effort and focus while simultaneously remaining unshaken by external fluctuations. The detached individual moves through life with calm decisiveness, unshakable by praise, criticism, success, or failure. Their focus is like a laser, concentrated on the present moment and the actions within their sphere of influence, rather than being scattered across imagined futures or external expectations. Central to this detachment is the cultivation of presence. Presence is the art of immersing yourself fully in the current moment, in the task at hand, in the decisions you are making now. The mind tends to wander, worrying about outcomes, replaying mistakes, or fantasizing about success. This mental drift diminishes control and fuels frustration, stress, and distraction. By anchoring attention to the present, you reclaim authority over your energy and actions. Detachment from outcome allows presence to flourish, and presence ensures that every choice, every effort, and every response is executed with clarity and power. Another dimension of detachment is emotional resilience. Expectation is the breeding ground for disappointment and frustration. When you tie your happiness or sense of competence to the approval of others, the validation of circumstances, or the achievement of specific outcomes, your emotional state becomes hostage to variables beyond your control. Detachment liberates you. It allows you to experience the world fully without being consumed by it, to pursue ambition without being tormented by anxiety, and to face failure without collapsing into self-doubt. Emotional resilience grows because you understand that control lies in your focus and actions, not in the unpredictable tides of circumstance. Detachment also sharpens decision-making. When you are obsessed with a particular outcome, your choices are often driven by fear, desire, or bias toward that result. You may overthink, overcompensate, or manipulate situations in ways that compromise clarity and integrity. By detaching from outcomes, you create space for rationality, strategy, and long-term thinking. Decisions become less about appeasing expectation or avoiding failure and more about effectiveness, principle, and alignment with purpose. You gain the ability to respond to the present moment with precision rather than reacting to imagined futures. The relationship between control and focus is profound. Control is an internal state. It resides in what you direct, what you nurture, and where you place your attention. External chaos, distractions, disruptions, setbacks is inevitable, but it cannot dominate you unless you allow it to capture your focus. By concentrating on your sphere of influence, by refining your attention, by committing fully to the actions within your power, you create a life where results, though uncertain, are secondary to the mastery of your own mind and actions. The world may remain unpredictable, but your response becomes consistent, deliberate, and effective. Practically, detachment from outcomes requires daily practice and reinforcement. Begin by examining where in your life you tie self-worth, peace, or energy to results. Notice where anxiety, frustration, or disappointment arises from expectations you cannot guarantee. Shift focus to the actions, habits, and choices that are within your control. Celebrate discipline, consistency, and skill rather than only the reward. Anchor attention in the present and measure progress by effort rather than by fleeting external markers. Over time, this recalibration rewires the mind, cultivating resilience, calm, and unshakable presence. Detachment also enables innovation and creativity. Fear of failure often paralyzes action because the mind is fixated on outcomes. When you detach from results, fear diminishes, experimentation increases, and bold action becomes possible. You are free to try, to iterate, to adapt, and to grow because the fear of what might happen no longer dictates your behavior. This freedom, paradoxically, increases effectiveness and often leads to outcomes that are superior precisely because the mind is unburdened by attachment and distraction. Furthermore, detachment fosters deeper satisfaction and fulfillment. By focusing on effort, process, and mastery rather than external outcomes, life becomes richer and more meaningful. Achievements are appreciated for the skill, discipline, and growth they represent, not merely for the reward they bring. Setbacks become learning opportunities rather than sources of despair. Your sense of self becomes anchored in your capacity to act with clarity and purpose, rather than in the fickle approval of circumstance. Ultimately, detachment from outcomes is the path to freedom and control. It is the understanding that life is unpredictable, that results are never guaranteed, but that your focus, attention, and actions are always within your command. By placing emphasis on what you can control, rather than clinging to what you cannot, you cultivate a life of power, resilience, and unshakable calm. Detachment is not the absence of ambition. It is the mastery of the mind, the alignment of effort with intention, and the liberation from the tyranny of expectation. It is in this state that true control is found, not in manipulating the chaos around you, but in commanding the clarity, focus, and purposeful action within you